You may already be familiar with the Gamergate phenomenon, which basically goes something like this. A female game developer made a game called Depression Quest, in which the player is meant to experience what it's like to live with depression on a day-to-day basis. She was immediately harassed by mostly male gamers who felt that the game was not worthy. Her ex-boyfriend then posted a salacious tell-all in which he accused her of cheating on him, including sleeping with a video game journalist. The journalist in question had never actually reviewed Depression Quest, but the gamers who were harassing her used this as a further excuse to ramp up their misogyny and harassment of her, and started sending her very abusive messages and threatened her life, found her phone number and her address and published them online, forced her to leave her home and stay with friends. And apparently, the whole thing was obviously quite stressful for her. The gamers then came up with the Gamergate hashtag as a way to really obviously cover up violently misogynistic harassment with the idea that this is all just about ethics in video game journalism, despite the fact that they were continuing to attack the female video game developer while never actually going after the reviewer who, again, did not actually review her game. When people saw through that trick, they came up with the Not Your Shield hashtag, in which they created sock puppets pretending to be women and minorities who also supported the Gamergate hashtag, as if transparent misogyny and poor arguments would suddenly make sense if only they came from an oppressed minority. It's the Twitter equivalent of saying, "Oh, I can't be racist. I have a black friend who I won't name who totally laughed at this joke." There are hundreds of pages of chat logs showing the gamers dreaming up these overly complex misogynistic operations. You can see them at sites like We Hunted the Mammoth. I'll include a link below, where they do an admirable job of sorting through all of that dreck to point out the really horrible bits. So I won't spend much time on that. What I do want to talk about is that there really are serious problems with ethics in video game journalism. However, it doesn't necessarily have much to do with female indie game developers having friends and lovers within the video game industry. Back in 2011, the Redner Group made the huge mistake of publicly tweeting their plan to blacklist any reviewers who gave bad reviews to their game Duke Nukem, which turned out to be pretty much every review, which is why this plan did not work. It's not that blacklists are a new thing, it's just that rarely do we see a company being so obvious about it. In fact, it's pretty difficult to prove when a company is purposefully withholding opportunities from critics they feel are too critical. But there are plenty of ways to do this, including using non-disclosure agreements to give exclusives to critics that you do like and you know are going to give your game a positive review, and forcing other critics to play catch-up after the game has already gone public with the positive reviews that you knew you were going to get. And then there are mock reviews in which publishers hire critics to play their games early before release and do these sort of fake reviews so that ostensibly the company can review what the critic thinks and make any necessary changes before the game goes live. But Kotaku discovered that one publisher admitted to their reporter that he hired a critic to do a mock review and then threw the review away without even looking at it. The reason why? He had hired that critic because he knew that critic was going to give the game a bad review when it came out. So by hiring him as a mock reviewer, the publisher was able to just remove that negative review before it even happened. There are even publishers that try to fix reviews that are coming from the actual users, as EA did earlier this year with the game Dungeon Keeper. That game prompted the user to give the game a review, but in the prompt, they only offered the user two options, 5 stars or 1 through 4 stars. If the user chose 5 stars, they were taken to the marketplace where they could rate the app. If they chose 1 through 4 stars, they were taken to a feedback form, which would go back to EA. And all that isn't even getting into the many problems with things like Metacritic, where a large amount of data is condensed into an overly simplified grading system of video games. The problem is that video games, their whole power is their ability to be personalized to the user. So it's quite difficult to really give a video game one score that is going to be true for every user. That's why I and many other people are really loving this renaissance of indie developers making games like Depression Quest or Braid or Two Brothers. I love these sorts of games because they come at video games from a different perspective, and they take chances with forming a narrative and without going back to the normal video game tropes that we've seen over and over and over again. Although admittedly, sometimes those are fun too. Now, don't get me wrong. I still want to spend several hours in Borderlands shooting things with awesome guns just to get more awesome guns. But it's just like with movies and TV. I want both Citizen Kane and Pacific Rim. I want both True Detective and America's Next Top Model. And we're poised to get that as gamers. We are, especially with platforms like Steam, making it easier than ever for indie developers to be creative and find an audience. But there are things getting in the way of us achieving that dream. And those things include review fixing by large corporations, or being overly reliant on shallow reviews on sites like Metacritic. And more than anything, it includes Rush Limbaugh-esque misogynistic gamers who are bullying and harassing women out of the industry instead of joining together and trying to make the industry better.